William Christianberry is a photographer who introduces the idea of postmodernism. Here we have a breakaway from it's an evolution from the identity crisis that results from the World War II, Vietnam War, Korean War, Cold War, this sort of unending war. People now no longer have a sense of identity to even their own nation or to their own history because it's been so broken up. So William Christianberry takes it on where he visits the same place again and again and again and photographs it as it ages over time, taking away from its original context and watching it, this object, have a life that has no life, that progresses into nothing. His series on Hale County, Alabama, where he photographs different gas stations and other structures in the landscape, his philosophy that you're moving from a three-dimensional object, the building in its landscape, to a two-dimensional object, which is the photograph, that takes an impression of that image away and is a piece of paper with an image on it. And then as part of that series, he then builds the structure as a model, places it in the gallery space, so now it's become, once again, a three-dimensional object. And then he goes on to photograph the model. So he's going from 3D, 2D, 3D, 2D again. And in this example on the right, we can see that Absolut Vodka has a series of artists where different artists create advertisements for the Absolut Vodka, and here we have Absolut Christianberry. The new topographics extend Christianberry's sense of postmodernism, breaking down the seeming grandeur of human progress as well as urban development. The new topographics intend to walk the neutral line between criticism of current cultural trends and praise for human intelligence and the sublime. In other words, they avoid making photographs that progress and develop in urban areas to show how that can seem destructive and useless, like photojournalism or even Dada. And they also avoid making photographs that inspire awe at human intelligence or the unexplainable beauty of humans and nature, as in the modernist photographers or the early topographic survey photographers. This is Joel Sternfeld with a fireman picking a pumpkin in front of the house in fire. And so the new topographics are it's almost like the party's over. We have Winogrand and Lee Friedlander, who are in the middle of the busy city, taking all these photographs, looking at the quirkiness of human beings, almost a celebration of life. It's in the midst of excess, of knowing what it is to have luxury, and what that experience looks like. And now with new topographics, the landscape has been developed, there's progress, and it's almost like the party's over. They're looking at what's left over, at what humans have experienced and how they've also left it behind. We have William Eggleston making the grandeur of the banal, that instead of a giant mountain like Ansel Adams, we have the tricycle that we walk by every day. That these small objects now become larger than life. They're larger than humans themselves, just as the mountain and the waterfall were sublime. Here we have the tricycle that is sort of is a symbol of triumph for a small child, to be able to be mobile and move on. And yet here, as adults, we are made smaller than, like the figure on the mountaintop. this object that seems insurmountable, and yet it's left over. Celebrating these things is really small details that everyone walks by. Again, the photographer who's showing us what we don't look at and maybe refuse to see, but now we only see the cracks in the wall instead of the freaks in the show. We have Cindy Sherman to wrap up the discussion, who takes on postmodernism and looks at the grand narrative. Grand narrative meaning the overarching philosophy of structure, how we put ourselves together in society, specifically from a woman's point of view. And so we see her placing herself in these stereotypes of women and explore ideas of beauty, of vulnerability, of aging, of vanity, of costume, of sort of this fakeness that women walk around with based on the structure of hierarchy between men and women. The grand narrative is a critical theory out of postmodernism that implies a cultural narrative that explains and justifies culture's power structures and the accepted models for social relationships. Examples of grand narratives include hierarchy of business and government, religion, and in Sherman's case, gender roles, better understood as stereotypes. Postmodernism and post-structuralism challenge these grand narratives and aim to undermine the ideologies of the so-called universal truth. Looking at prosthetics here, this obsession, especially with the male gaze of objectifying women, seeing women as sex objects, seeing prosthetics as these objects that ignite desire but are also repulsive at the same time. That we might come to conclude that artists take empirical observations to reveal a message in some endeavor to reveal the truth, where the truth might be an object for the object's beauty itself or the beauty that it ignites in our own memory, or the truth, like in this instance, where we don't really want to look at it, but at the same time we understand that it exists. That we look for a meaning beyond our understanding that explains how we are and how we came to be.